Thank you all for being here tonight. I know this probably isn't what you expected when you heard I'd be speaking. Many of you might have assumed I'd talk about movies or maybe have another chat with an empty chair. But let me tell you, what I'm about to share is far stranger than that moment ever was. I'm over 90 years old now, and I've seen a lot in my lifetime. I've made westerns, crime dramas, war stories. I've directed films about heroes and villains, redemption and revenge. I've met presidents, astronauts, and countless remarkable people. But nothing, and I truly mean nothing, prepared me for what happened about 3 years ago. I'm going to tell you about the night Jesus Christ appeared to me in a dream and spoke to me about America. Now, before you start getting uneasy or checking your watches, please hear me out. I understand how it sounds. I'm not a preacher, I'm not campaigning for anything, and I'm not here to sell you a message. I'm just an old man who spent most of his life squinting into the California sun, making movies, and trying to stay grounded. I've never been the type to chase mystical experiences or claim to have spiritual visions. I'm a practical man. I trust what I can see, touch, and build with my own hands. But this was different. It happened, and it felt as real as anything I've ever known. It was a Tuesday night in late September. I remember it clearly because I had spent the day handling ranch work up in Carmel. My body was worn out, the kind of fatigue that comes from real physical labor, not the mental tiredness of long hours behind a camera or in an editing room. Dinner was simple: grilled chicken, some vegetables from the garden, and a glass of water. I don't drink much anymore. At my age, you learn to keep life simple. I went to bed early, around 9 o'clock. The windows were open, and I could hear the sound of the Pacific Ocean in the distance. That steady rhythm of the waves, a sound I've fallen asleep to for decades, filled the night. It's a sound that usually brings me peace and reminds me how small we truly are in the vastness of everything. I drifted off to sleep quickly, which doesn't always happen at my age. Then I found myself dreaming. But it wasn't like any dream I'd ever had before. You know how dreams tend to be scattered, jumping from one strange scene to another without logic? This wasn't like that. This dream was clear, steady, and focused. It felt, for lack of a better word, more real than reality itself. I was standing in a landscape that looked like the high desert of Nevada or Arizona, a place I'd filmed in before. Something familiar. The sky stretched endlessly, a deep western blue, and the sun was beginning to set, covering everything in shades of gold and amber. The air was still, not a single breeze. The silence was both empty and full at the same time. Then I saw him. He stood about 30 feet away, and somehow I knew exactly who he was. Don't ask me how, and I just knew. It was a kind of knowing that came from somewhere far beyond reason or the senses. He wasn't wearing robes like the ones you see in old paintings. Instead, he wore simple clothes: jeans, a work shirt, and boots. He looked like a carpenter, which I suppose makes perfect sense. He looked like someone who knew the value of hard work, of sweat, effort, and creating something from nothing. I've tried 1,000 times to describe his face since that night. It was weathered but timeless, strong yet kind. His eyes were deep and dark, and when he looked at me, it felt like he saw everything. Every mistake, every good deed, every doubt, and every act of courage. Yet there was no judgment in his gaze, only understanding and love. He began walking toward me slowly, and I realized I couldn't move. Not out of fear, but because I didn't want to. I wanted to stay right there in that moment, in that presence. When he was about 10 feet away, he stopped and smiled. It was a small, calm smile, one that seemed to say, "I know you're confused, but everything will be all right." Then he spoke. His voice was deep and steady, carrying an authority that didn't come from loudness but from complete certainty. "Clint," he said, and hearing my name from him made something tighten inside my chest. "I've come to tell you something about America." I nodded, unsure what else to do. I've spoken with presidents, handled actors in crisis, and directed massive scenes with hundreds of extras. But standing before him, I felt like a child. "I know you're wondering why I'm here," he continued. "Why you? Why now? You've never been deeply religious. You've had your doubts and questions. You've made peace with the fact that some things can't be fully known or proven, and that's all right. I don't need your perfection. I never did. What I need now is your voice." He paused and looked out over the wide desert. I followed his gaze. The sun was sinking lower, stretching long shadows across the sand. "America," he said, and there was both affection and sorrow in his tone. Do you know what America was meant to be? I shook my head. I thought I did. Freedom, opportunity, the pursuit of happiness. All the ideals we're taught, all the values we defend in wars. But standing there, I realized I didn't understand it the way he did. America was meant to be a light, he said, turning toward me. Not the only light, but a light nonetheless. A place where people could begin again, where mistakes could be forgiven, where a person's worth wasn't measured by their birth but by their character and choices. A nation founded on the belief that every human being has dignity, value, and the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning. He stepped closer, but somewhere along the way that vision was lost. Not by everyone, not entirely, but enough that a reminder is needed. I finally found my voice. What do you mean? What have we lost? He looked at me with those deep, knowing eyes. You've become divided, he said quietly. You've forgotten that before you are Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, black or white, rich or poor, you are human beings, created in the image of God. You are brothers and sisters. You are family. I felt something twist inside me because I knew he was right. I've seen it, the anger, the contempt, the way people talk past each other instead of to one another. How we've turned neighbors into enemies over politics, opinions, things that in the span of eternity matter far less than we think. You've made idols of your ideologies, he went on. Both sides have done this. You've taken political beliefs and treated them like sacred truth. You've decided that anyone who disagrees with you isn't just mistaken, they're evil. And in doing that, you've forgotten how to love. You've forgotten how to forgive. You've forgotten how to listen. He began walking, and I walked beside him. Our boots crunched softly on the dry ground. I came to Earth, he said, to teach people to love their enemies. He said, not to tolerate them, not just to coexist with them, but to love them. Do you realize how radical that was? How radical it still is. Back then, the Pharisees and Sadducees despised one another. Jews and Samaritans had deep hatred between them. The Romans ruled harshly over all. And yet I came and said, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn the other as well. He stopped walking and turned fully toward me. That message hasn't changed, Clint, he said. It's as true now as it was 2,000 years ago. But your country has forgotten it. You've come to believe it's more important to win than to love, more important to be right than to be kind, more important to defeat the other side than to understand them. I thought about all the conversations and debates I'd had over the years, arguments about politics and policies. I remembered the times I'd been angry at people who saw things differently, the moments I dismissed their fears or concerns because they didn't align with mine. What do you want us to do? I asked him. How do we fix this? He smiled softly, that same calm, knowing smile. It starts with individuals, he said. It always starts with individuals. One person choosing love instead of hate. One person choosing forgiveness over resentment. One person brave enough to reach across the divide and say, you're my brother. You're my sister. We may disagree, but I will not dehumanize or demonize you. I will try to understand you. He placed his hand on my shoulder and I felt a warmth spread through me. America has done great things, he said. You've been a beacon of hope to millions. You've welcomed the tired and the poor. You've stood against tyranny, created, built, and inspired through art, innovation, and courage. But you've also done terrible things. You've enslaved people, broken promises, been greedy, prideful, and cruel. Like every nation, like every person, you carry the potential for both great good and great evil. He looked at me steadily. The question now, he said, is which will you choose? Will you continue down this path of division and hate? Will you allow fear and anger to decide your future? Or will you remember who you were meant to be? Will you remember that love is stronger than hate? That forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and that unity endures longer than division? I felt tears on my face, and I'm not someone who cries easily. It feels impossible, I said. People are so angry, so set in their ways. I know, he said quietly. It does seem impossible. It also seemed impossible for the blind to see, for the lame to walk, for the dead to rise. But nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible when people choose love over fear. He removed his hand from my shoulder and turned back toward the horizon. The sun had nearly set and the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Tell them this, he said. Tell them that I love them, all of them. Conservatives and liberals, believers and skeptics, the wealthy and the struggling. Tell them their worth doesn't come from what they achieve, how much they own, or the political battles they win. It comes from the simple truth that they exist, that they are my children, loved beyond measure. He looked at me one last time. Tell them to lay down their weapons, the weapons of rhetoric, judgment, and contempt. Tell them to take up the tools of peace, compassion, understanding, and humility. Tell them that it's not weakness to admit when you're wrong, not naive to choose mercy over judgment, not foolish to believe things can improve. He paused, his eyes steady. Tell them that America's best days can still lie ahead, but only if she remembers what she was meant to be. Not a nation of perfect people, that will never exist, but a place where imperfect people strive together toward something better. A country where freedom is balanced by responsibility. A place where rights are honored alongside responsibilities. A place where the strong protect the weak, where the wealthy care for the poor, and where the majority respects the minority. Tell them, he said, his voice calm yet firm, that time is shorter than they realize, that life is more precious than they understand, that the arguments they cling to so tightly will one day fade away, but love endures forever. I wanted to ask him more. I had 1,000 questions, but before I could speak, I felt myself starting to wake up. The desert around me began to fade. His figure grew faint, turning almost transparent. I was being drawn back, to my bedroom in Carmel, to my aging body, to the world I knew. The last thing I heard him say was, "Fear not, Clint. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I am with all of you." I never left, then I was awake. I sat up in bed and I could still feel the warmth where his hand had rested on my shoulder. The room was dark, lit only by moonlight coming through the window. I could hear the ocean in the distance, the same sound as every night, but everything felt different. I felt different. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. I'd been asleep for 5 hours, though it felt like only minutes. I got out of bed, walked to my desk, turned on the lamp, and found a piece of paper and a pen. Then I began writing every word I could remember, every image of that desert, every feeling I'd experienced. I wrote for 2 hours straight. By the time I finished, my hand ached and my eyes were tired, but I had it all down. Since that night, I've thought about that encounter every single day. I've reflected on his message and what he asked of me, and I've struggled with it because, truthfully, I'm not used to being a messenger. I'm used to telling stories, creating characters, exploring themes. But this was different. This was real. This happened. I've asked myself countless times if it was just a dream, if my mind was sorting through worries about the state of the country, if my imagination had taken over. But deep down, in that place where truth can't be denied, I know it was more than that. I know he was really there. I know the message was real. So what do I do with it? What's the purpose of being given a message like that from Jesus Christ about America? At first, I thought about keeping it to myself. I don't need people thinking I've lost my mind. I don't want the ridicule, the disbelief, or the headlines. But every time I consider staying silent, I feel that warmth on my shoulder again. And I hear his last words, "I am with you always," so I'm telling you, just as he told me. I'm telling you that we need to love each other again. We need to see one another as human beings, not as enemies or stereotypes. We need to remember what truly matters, not the next election, not the next trending outrage, not the next debate online. What matters is how we treat one another, how we protect the vulnerable, and how we show kindness, mercy, and understanding. I'm telling you now, America's real problems aren't political, they're spiritual. They come from within the human heart. No law, however well written, can heal a heart hardened by hatred. No policy, no matter how thoughtful, can repair a soul consumed by anger. Only love can do that. Only forgiveness and grace have that power. I'm not saying any of this will be easy. Jesus never promised ease. He said his yoke was easy and his burden light compared to the weight of sin and hate. But he never said following him would be comfortable. He never said that loving your enemies would come naturally or that turning the other cheek wouldn't hurt. But he did promise that it would be worth it. He promised love would win, that light would conquer darkness, and that he would walk beside us through it all. I don't know why he appeared to me. I don't know why he chose an old actor and filmmaker to share this message. Maybe because I've told stories about imperfect men searching for redemption. Maybe because I've spent years exploring justice, mercy, and forgiveness. Or maybe because I was simply ready to listen. But the reason isn't what matters most. What matters is the message itself. He's asking us to rise higher, to act better, to love more and hate less, to forgive more and judge less, to understand more and condemn less. He's reminding us that we're all connected. We all live under the same sky, breathe the same air, and walk the same earth. We're all just trying to make sense of this beautiful, complicated life. He's asking us to remember that before we're Americans, we're human beings. And before that, we're his children. Every single one of us, without exception. I know some of you don't believe in God or in Jesus. Some might think this story is made up or just the imagination of an old man. And that's all right. You don't have to share my faith to understand the truth behind his words. We do need to love one another more. We do need to stop treating those who disagree with us as enemies. We must remember our shared humanity. These aren't only religious values, they're human ones. They form the base of any healthy society, any real democracy, any community worth belonging to. I'm an old man now, and I don't know how much time I've got left. But I do know this. I want to spend what time I have living out that message, learning to love deeper, to listen better, to bridge divides instead of widening them. I want America to remember what she was meant to be. Not perfect because we never were, but always striving toward something greater. Always working for a more just, kind, and united nation. That's what he wants for us too. Not perfection, but progress. Not overnight change, but steady growth. Not flawless outcomes, but honest effort. So I'm asking you, all of you, no matter your politics, religion, or background, to think about what you can do. What can you do today to show love to someone you disagree with? What can you do to offer grace instead of judgment? What can you do to build a bridge where a wall once stood? Start small. Start with one person, one moment, one decision to see another's humanity instead of their viewpoint. Then do it again tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. That's how cultures change. That's how nations heal. One person at a time, one act of love at a time, one choice toward kindness at a time. Jesus appeared to me in a dream and told me something about America. He said we're in trouble, but we're not without hope. He said we're divided, but we can be united again. He said we've lost our way, but we can find it once more. He said he loves us, all of us, beyond anything we can imagine, and he's asking us to love one another the same way. That's the message. That's why I'm standing here tonight. I don't expect everyone to believe me. I don't expect this to change the world overnight. But I do hope it changes someone. Maybe one person will hear this and decide to be a little kinder tomorrow, a little more patient, a little more loving. That's how it begins. One small choice that inspires another and another, until the change spreads. I've spent my life telling stories of heroes and villains, justice and injustice, light and darkness. But the greatest story of all is the one we're living now, the story of imperfect people working to make a better world. The story of broken souls finding healing. The story of divided hearts learning to unite. That's the story Jesus wants us to write. And I believe we can. Thank you for listening. God bless you all and God bless America.